Aotearoa, New Zealand sees about 440 people arriving in the country on a regular basis, which sees healthcare, education, roading, sewage systems being pushed to the limits. At the same time, among other things, whānau is still struggling to recover after Cyclone Gabrielle. In December, the government further loosened immigration settings, essentially obliterating any remnants of the Great Immigration Reset or rebalance, creating temporary residence pathways for bus drivers and truck drivers, as we welcome drivers from the Philippines, India and Fiji. Here to discuss this and more is ACT Party leader David Seymour. Tēnā koe, David. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, tēnā koe and tēnā koutou katoa.
Now, why are we continuing to keep our borders open for people wanting to come and live here when we can hardly manage to support the population that already exists?
Well, first of all, I'm talking a lot about pronouns, and there's no we in this. The government has made a policy decision to do that, and I think they've done it for a number of reasons. One is that those people, like generations of New Zealanders have come here over the last 900 years, are seeking a better life and some opportunity. So that's why they're coming. I think the government's done it because New Zealand firms have been struggling to keep up with demand, struggling as exporters to compete, and struggling as service providers to actually serve the New Zealand population without ever increasing costs. So, you can understand why the government has done this, why people have come, and why firms and employers have been desperate to get more workers, so that ultimately people at home who, need to consume things can get them at a more reasonable price. They've basically done it because their immigration reset put inflation out of control. Now, that's the why, but I think your question about infrastructure is valid. I think that ultimately immigration policy is about infrastructure, because if you don't have the pipes and the roads and the bus stops and the libraries and the connections so that there's somewhere for people to live, then inevitably you get pushback against government immigration policy. And I just think if New Zealand's going to be a competitive place with first world living standards, then you've got to be able to get skills in from outside the country, and that includes for building infrastructure. The current tunnel being built under Auckland, many of the roads, such as the road north from Tamaki Makaurau to Te Tai Tokerau, that is being built. That motorway is being built by a lot of foreign engineers. So we've got to be open if we're going to be competitive, and ultimately, the government's got to allow firms to get the kind of skills to build the infrastructure that you're demanding.
So you're in support of the government intention?
Yeah, I think the government made a big mistake with this so-called immigration reset. They believed if they restricted people coming to the country and bringing their skills and their know-how, then somehow, companies would just become more efficient because they didn't have any staff. Well, what's actually happened is that there's a worldwide labour shortage. New Zealand's been losing out. New Zealand firms are finding it harder to compete. And as a result, New Zealand ends up being poorer than it would otherwise be.
Okay.
I think what really matters is infrastructure funding, infrastructure financing, and the kind of regulations around building things in New Zealand, all of which I think the next government will have to do better. More permissive planning regulations, more sources of financing capital to build infrastructure, and more sources of raising money, such as tolls. If you can get a road built 10 years earlier and pay a toll on it for that time, why not?
Okay.
So we're going to have to be way more imaginative about how infrastructure is built and make it more affordable and cheaper, so that people can keep coming and building this great country.
David, from 2022 to 2023, almost 131,000 people migrated to New Zealand, with around 1,600 people leaving. What should we be doing to keep Kiwis here?
Well, ultimately, Kiwis are not much different from humans around the rest of the world. First and foremost, people want to be safe. I mean, people are, concerned about actually going out on the street in New Zealand. And I see, the fact that you can't run a Michael Hill jeweler in Takapuna because nobody wants to work there because it's been robbed 5 times in 6 months. That's a serious issue. So we've got to actually get back to basic values that a person has a right to be safe on the street, in their homes, in their business, in their place of work. And if they're not harming anyone else, that's their right. On the other hand, if you do harm people, there's actually got to be some consequences. I think that balance has shifted to the point of lawlessness. The second issue is people want a good paying job that will actually allow them to make ends meet and feel like they're part of this community with some dignity. That is really important to so many people. And right now you've got huge amounts of government waste. Someone on the minimum wage ends up going on to the 30-cent tax rate. We're overtaxed. And as a result, people feel, well, if I move to Australia, I get more money, I get to keep more of my own money, and life's just easier and the streets are safer. And finally, I would say that the current government's obsession with interpreting Te Tiriti as a document of division with different roles in society based on your ancestry is making a lot of people uncomfortable, because there are no successful societies where you have different roles in society based on your ancestry. But in nearly every area of policy, we're told that's what the treaty means. I don't think it does, but I do think it's making people uncomfortable. And there are some people who have actually decided to leave because of it. They'll never say it, but that's what they're doing.
Well, looking at some of the problems we're having to deal with, you mentioned the Michael Hill jeweller situation. Both Police Minister Anderson and the Prime Minister have recently said that more can be done to address crime. Businesses are closing due to multiple violent ram raids, and we're hearing more violent crime reported in the news. What's the solution here, David? What needs to happen to better protect our hardworking communities?
Well, I diagnosed the problem first. This government came in with a promise to reduce the prison population by 30%. And it's one goal that Labor has actually achieved. They've reduced the population of sentenced prisoners by 38% in 5 years. And we now know the results of this experiment. You let criminals out on the streets, guess what they do? More crime. None of this was surprising. So ACT says, unfortunately, if people are going to commit crimes, then we need to fund the prison beds so judges have the option of sending them away. At the moment, you've got police getting told, oh, maybe don't arrest people because the cells are full. The government needs to have an option for people who are harming others. And I would make the same case for youth offenders. They know they can't be touched. That's why they bash up a dairy to steal 2 Moro bars and put it on TikTok, because they know ultimately they're going to get taken to an oranga tamariki facility where it's insecure and they can just leave. We say, let's fund corrections to have a youth wing with specialist youth facilities where you'll get real rehabilitation. For the first time, the mental health support, the physical safety, the nutrition and the structure that these kids probably never had in their life. But you can't leave, you won't have your phone, and it won't be much fun. At the moment, I don't think the state actually has an answer to people. And then you say, well, what about rehabilitation? Sure, but what's happening right now, no one's being rehabilitated because they're just in and out of jail, in and out of oranga tamariki. There's no actual structure to it, no rehab happening, and we've got the worst of all worlds, people in jail and lots of crime. So lock people up, rehabilitate, then let them out. That's the sequence we need to go through.
ACT Leader David Seymour, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Tēnā koe.
Ka kite.